What does it really take to be successful without losing yourself in the process? Today, I'm joined by Adebisi BC Badamosi, a licensed mental health counselor, business owner, and founder of Mindful Blooms Counseling. BC works with ambitious women who are driven, capable, and often seen as the strong one. But behind the success, many are carrying self doubt, perfectionism, burnout, and the pressure to constantly prove themselves. In this conversation, we're talking about how to pursue big goals without tying your worth to your accomplishments, why telling people to just rest more often misses the real problem, and how faith, identity, community, and mental health can work together in the healing process. We also talk about authenticity, overcoming difficult experiences, receiving support, and what it looks like to build a life that is not only successful, but peaceful, meaningful, and aligned with who God created you to be. This is an honest, encouraging, and powerful conversation for anyone who has ever felt the pressure to keep performing, keep achieving, and keep holding everything together. Let's get rooted. Let's get real. Here is my conversation with BC Badamosi. All right. Hey, BC, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence, being on this podcast with me. So excited to have you here. And
Thank you for having me.
yeah, for sure. And, like every good story, I ask everybody the same question. Like every good story, it's vital to start from the beginning. So, BC, what is your story? How did you become who you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I always like to start by sharing that I am the daughter of an immigrant. I'm the eldest daughter of a Nigerian immigrant. And if anyone knows very much about African parents, they tend to at least have very ambitious goals for their children. For most of them, your options are to become an engineer, a doctor, or a lawyer. And for a long time, I was okay with that. I believed I was on the path to become a doctor, and I was very ambitious all through childhood, my teenage years. I actually ended up graduating with my associates before I graduated with my high school diploma, and I had to go back to high school for about a week as
Wow,
an
that's incredible.
18-year-old. Yeah, and so I did what was called dual enrollment at the time. I got that finished, then headed to university, and I failed my first year at university. And
Oh
that
my
was
goodness.
yeah. So I was in
Yeah.
year 3 of my bachelor's degree at that point. So that's when the classes are actually very specific to your program. I was pre-med at the time, failed half of my classes that year, and really had to reckon with whether I was where I wanted to be, doing what I wanted to do. And very quickly and painfully, I say quickly, but it was also pretty painful in that time span, realized that it was not what I wanted. And I was living a lot of my life trying to fulfill the wishes of other people,
Mm,
not even realizing that, or I guess fully accepting that at least my immediate family, my parents, did not care what I did. They were just happy that I was happy. And when they saw that I was actually not where I wanted to be, it was like, so a lot of assumptions were being made. Now
mm,
it's time to figure out what I actually wanted for myself.
yeah. So can I ask what kind of classes were there? Were they in the third year? And
Yeah. So
yeah.
it was organic chemistry, it was genetics, it was some higher level math classes. Yeah, it was like all in.
Wow.
I'm
Oh my
18 years
gosh. All
old
that at once?
taking all those
Jeez.
classes.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Absolutely. Yes.
okay. So you were doing that. Do you remember like what was that conversation like with the guidance counselors, your parents? Like, hey, I'm really struggling this first year of college. Like how do I
Yeah.
like what was that like?
I don't remember much about my parents, but I mean, not my parents. I don't remember much about the guidance counselor, but I do
Okay.
remember with my parents, it was a lot of, well, we never actually said that. And reflecting back, I
Okay.
was like, you know what? It wasn't them. It was external, like other relatives, like aunts and uncles and things like that.
Yeah.
But my actual parents had very high expectations in terms of like grades and making sure I prioritize
Okay.
academics, but
Yeah.
the direction of said academics, they didn't really care. And looking back, as an adult, many years removed from that time frame, and looking at my own parents, it's like, wow, they're very entrepreneurial themselves. Like they didn't follow traditional routes either. And so they, I try to give my younger self some grace, but man, was she dumb sometimes,
Yeah.
honestly. And so really just being able to look back and see that I had placed so many expectations on
Mm,
myself too. Not to say there
yeah.
weren't any external ones, but I had gotten myself into a lot of the heartache that I was in.
For sure. Yeah. Do you think that do you think that's pretty common with college students, like
Yeah,
high school
yeah,
students?
especially with the cultural pressures or the ambitiously driven people. Sometimes it can get to a point where we recognize, oh, what we're aiming for may not have been our own goal, or
Mm,
we may not have actually ever defined success for us. And so what can happen there is the goalpost keeps moving because we don't have an actual target in mind, and we're just searching for a feeling sometimes instead of actually sitting down and thinking about what do I truly want for myself.
I love that you said like define success. It's just like if we don't do that, that can, I mean, it's literally like trying to wrangle in a beast because it can mean anything. It can be different for you, different for
Yeah.
me, different for people listening. Like, I love that you said that. So, from defining success, how did you do that in this season of life? And when did that like click?
Well, one of the things that really helped for me is I went on my first international mission trip to the
Okay.
Dominican Republic.
Wow.
And the area that we had went to was a few hours away from the Haitian Dominican Republic border. There was a
Yeah.
lot of poverty, a lot of incredibly young teen pregnancies. Human trafficking is huge there. They
Mm,
were third in
yeah.
the world at one point.
Yeah.
And really just seeing how much it was kind of twofold. I saw that people were quote unquote suffering in
Mm,
the, I guess, Western idea of suffering. But if you looked at them and you sat with them, despite what they were experiencing, so many of them had such joy. Like they were
mm,
so full of love and life
yeah.
and peace. And it was like, wow, even in like some of the hardest circumstances you might ever see in your life, they have a deeper sense of peace than people in another country a few hours away who
Mm,
have so much more available to them. Their level of peace is still less than what people here are experiencing.
sure.
And at
Sure.
that point, I was already really deep into the idea of psychology and like wanting to do that. I was almost finished with my new path, new path for my bachelor's, which ended up being psychology. But as many of us know, you can't do much with just a bachelor's. So I was like, well, what am I going to do
Yeah,
next? And
for sure.
so I did this trip 6 months before graduating, decided I was just going to take a year off after I graduated. I was going to work at an agency as a technician and just figure out life for myself.
Mm,
And as I was doing that, I really came to find that I just loved people, like sitting with people,
mm,
hearing their stories and helping them process what's going on. And that took away the external metrics of what success looked like for me. Like I wasn't reaching for a certain title anymore or a certain like ambitious way of life. Like I am still ambitious, but I felt more peace in the in between, like the steps. So sitting in sessions with people, really getting to talk to people. Like if therapy sessions one to one was all I ever did, like if you never saw me on big stages or publishing articles or journals or anything, it would be enough for me because I got to the place that I felt that true sense of peace.
yeah, for sure. So, was there like something, I guess when did you figure out like doing this gave you peace? Was it on the mission trip? Was it like an internship?
Yeah, it was more so talking to people and hearing their stories. It's just like,
Okay.
I wish I could do this all the time. Like, I wish I could hear more people's stories. I wish I could get to know people. I wish I could, I wish I could have helped the Dominican people who had experienced trauma in a deeper
Sure.
way. And I
Sure.
was like, this is incredible. And I can do this in my home too. Like, I don't have to fly to another country to do this kind of work. And in fact, I did end up moving there for a few years. I got married to one of my translators and did live there for a bit,
Wow.
got to work with an incredible human trafficking organization. But the biggest takeaway is that I could do this anywhere. And that was super cool. I was super grateful to have had that revelation on that trip.
Yeah, for sure. So you come back from the trip and you realize this new passion. How,
Yeah.
how, old- how, how old were you when that happened?
I would have been 21.
Okay. So you find this new passion. Did you
Mhm.
talk to your family about it? Did you feel like they supported you? Like you knew this is what you wanted
Yeah.
to do. How did that conversation go?
Immediate family. So I'm the oldest of three. I've got
Hmm.
two brothers and my parents. Honestly, they were all fine. My mom even did her bachelor's in psychology.
Nice.
So
Okay.
she really understood that piece. But for my dad, it was like, you just gotta do something. Like do something and to
You
like
got to do something. Yeah.
figure yourself out, right? Try things. But the what of it all was really up to me.
Yeah, for sure. Do you feel like you had a lot of like support going into this new venture? This from your family,
Yeah,
friends? Okay.
absolutely. Like, I don't feel like I was discouraged. Like, friends were supportive. Like, so much of the pressure that I had felt or believed I was experiencing had been from myself.
Mm, yeah. Wow. So it's almost like, I mean, obviously there are some people who get pressure from their family sometimes, but it seems more
Yeah.
like most of the pressure is from inside, from us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with ambitious people, like that's where I see, like it may have started externally. Like there's definitely points in my teenage years where I can definitely pinpoint where it may have come from other people,
Yeah.
but that's the thing that gets missing as you continue to get older. Those external voices at some point become your own, and
Mm,
you can be harder on yourself than anybody else could be a lot of the times. And so where I had been at that point was I had internalized and intensified ideas for myself.
okay. Yeah, for sure. And would you say, I guess, how did you get out of that? I guess, how did the next part of your story, how did that impact you then?
Yeah. A lot of my own personal therapy, I will say that that had
Fair enough.
helped. The program that I ended up going into, I started it about a year after I'd finished my bachelor's, and they had a requirement of at least 2 semesters of therapy.
Okay.
One your very first semester in the program and one your first semester in internship. And
Okay.
so when I'd started my program, I had to jump into personal therapy. And unfortunately, my personal therapist, not the greatest. Like I
No.
ended up getting a different therapist later, but because that first semester we were supposed to be intentionally thinking of what it was like in the client's position. What was it like to be on the other side of therapy? I was aware of that and kind of thinking through, okay, what do I wish had happened differently in that session? Like now that I'm at least talking about this, what's going on for myself? And so I
Mm,
spent more time like diving deeper, really kind of just processing what I did and didn't want for myself. And then COVID hit in the following
COVID.
semester. COVID hit my second semester in grad school. And if you want to talk about having time to think about stuff, that definitely gave me so much time to think about stuff. That lockdown, that first month, like so
Hmm.
it's been 6 years now, but it still feels like it was yesterday in a lot of ways. And at that point, I had also been on staff at my childhood church. I had gone to this church since I was a toddler, if that. I'd started volunteering from second grade all the way up to high school because I didn't want to sit
Wow.
in big service, and I got to sit in with children's church. And when I had failed that first year of college, I'd been living on campus and came back home to finish the rest of my degree. And when I did come back home, I was offered a part-time position at the church. So a lot of the same work I'd already been doing, but just more of it and actually compensated. When COVID hit, I switched from being the ministry assistant to, um, social media manager. I don't know. It was COVID. We were just trying to fit
We
in
were all trying to figure it
to
out.
where we could. And that summer was a lot happening in the
Mm,
country.
yeah.
And it had been, I think by this point, 3 completely tragic murders of Black people at that point. It had been Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and then George Floyd was the catalyst for what ended up happening to me. I was sitting in the back of Sanctuary, monitoring the live stream, so watching the comments, making sure everybody could hear all of that. And the week after George Floyd's passing, my pastor decided to start a sermon series against Black Lives Matter for 4
Mm,
weeks. And that first one, he, like, just multiple times completely just bashed the agenda or the idea that
mm,
Black people have been mistreated, that there's nothing wrong with our country, all of that. And I was sitting there listening to that, reading comments, and just going, I've been here over 20 years. Like, I've openly talked about how things like this have impacted me. I've honestly experienced some pretty messed up stuff here. And sitting there is like, "Ho what? Like, am I not is my experiences not real? Are they not valid?"
mm,
And I had to walk out. I did end up walking out of that service. Granted, it was still COVID, so no one was really in the sanctuary,
right.
but
Yeah.
I walked out and I was like, "What just happened?" Like, it felt like such a disconnect to witness the place where I'd grown up, felt so loved and encouraged, try to weaponize our beliefs to further the harm of
Mm,
other people
yeah.
because of their ethnicity or their race. There was just a huge disconnect. And it really just highlighted, oh, what is going on? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? And it got worse after that. I ended up
Mm,
having to put in my 2-week resignation letter. In that letter, I'd went through and I just quoted, like, from multiple sermons what he had said over the last few weeks and as to why I felt they were unbiblical and why I no longer felt comfortable in this place. But
wow.
it really, like, shattered my identity. I was like, I thought I knew what was true, how we were
Yeah.
supposed to treat people,
Yeah.
how my faith was guiding me to live. And for a while, it was just like, did I misunderstand something? Like, this can't be possible. Like, there's no way. And unfortunately, especially during that time period, that was not uncommon. There was a
Mm,
lot of places over the country who felt or pastored from this belief system. And it's kinda like a domino effect of seeing, like, okay, it's not just me, something is happening in our culture, in our
mm,
country, and it
yeah.
really led me into so much more research, understanding the intersection of religion and racial trauma and how something so beautiful and life-giving can be warped by people, and it
Yeah.
let me get to a place where I could say, "Okay, if this is my story, and I have the resources to get support, imagine how many other people don't have that and are struggling
Right.
in this way." So it really helped to fine tune the direction I went with my counseling, with my
Yeah.
clients, got to a place where I was really able to wrestle with my faith and kind of just see, okay, what do I believe because I believe it? And what do I believe because I was told to believe? And really get to a place where it felt more true to myself. Like, this is my faith because it's what I believe, not just because it's what I've grown around. And I would have preferred if it had happened differently. That was pretty
Sure,
painful.
sure, for
But
sure.
the end result, I don't know if I would have the kind of faith I have today if I hadn't been through that.
Yeah. So, how would you say your faith is now? I mean, it sounds
Yeah.
tell me about that.
Yeah, I still very much identify as a Christian. I I would say the biggest thing is that like one of the things that kind of still repeats in my head and still is kind of ongoing given a lot of what we see today is the statement, you can't be a Christian if. That's a statement
Yes.
that I have really come to dislike and fight
Right.
against.
Right.
Like, I've gotten to a point where I'm not gonna ever be the one to tell someone that. Like, that is between me and God,
Right.
what's
That's
going
between you and the
on.
Lord for sure.
Yeah, and really just breaking down, like, every time I hear that going, "Okay, slow down.
Mm.
Something's going on with that person. That's on them. That's not about Jesus. That's not about my faith at all. They've got some work to do. I'm gonna let them work on that and just stay in my lane."
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, there was a while where I was like, "Is this of God? Like, this can't be." And so, kind of really just seeing it happen all over the place and kind of really diving in for myself, lots of conversation with other leaders I talked to and so many books and things like that. I was like, "You know what? It doesn't make sense. It's not aligned with what I know to be true." And I can recognize that there's a lot of work that needs to be done because humans have messed up a lot of things, and I still serve a good God.
Amen to that for sure. I love that part of your story because I've heard stories like that before. And then they're
Yeah.
just like, man, I'm done with this Christian stuff. Like I'm
Yeah.
out. And I love that
Mhm.
you were like, wait a minute, let me look into
Yeah.
this more.
Mhm.
I think more people need to do that than just
Yeah.
washing their hands of it.
Mhm. And I will say, like, there was a period where from the outside, it may have looked like I walked away. Like, I was very much involved, like, I was at church, like, 5, 6 days a week, like, always
Sure.
there serving, and I had to take a big step back. I'd switched churches, I'd gone other places, and I kinda was just a backseat Baptist for a while. I was sitting there and
Sure.
kinda listening, but you weren't gonna see me all into these ministries or anything like that because I needed to figure stuff out.
Hmm.
But I knew if I had left completely, I probably never would have come back, and that wouldn't have been a fair chance to my faith either. So I had to figure out what it looked like for myself, but I will still to this day, I'm sure people talk about BC no longer being a Christian anymore because BC does this, this, and this. And you know what? I let them believe what they want because 'cause they're not the one living my life.
That's right. That's right. It's about your relationship with the Lord, not theirs.
Yeah. Mhm.
So someone's listening to this, kind of hearing your story and going like,
Yeah.
wow, like I'm experiencing that. Like I'm thinking about what I do with my faith. And
Yeah.
they're kind of wrestling with doing that wrestling match. Like, what would you say to them?
I would say the biggest thing is to ask questions. I feel like a
Yes.
lot of people have grown up in faith related spaces where they were shamed for asking questions,
Hmm.
which is so opposite of who Jesus is. Like,
Right.
Jesus was running away from his mom to go people ask people questions, like,
That's right.
live by his experience, if anything. And I think don't be afraid of answers. Like,
Mm,
ask the questions in good faith. Like, don't be cherry picking which answers you're going to accept and which ones you're
sure.
not. Like, genuinely be willing to talk about what's going in your head. Be mindful of the sources you're going to, like,
Absolutely.
absolutely, like, vet those out. But really, just for faith, for mental health, for whatever you're going through, ask about what you're feeling in your mind. Because if you're just going to keep it to yourself, it is going to be like an echo chamber and it's going to intensify and it's going to be painful and isolating and exhausting.
Right.
You need to talk about it with someone safe, but don't try to handle it all on your own.
Absolutely. I love that. And, the point that you made, not handling on your own kind of pours into something I talk a lot about is like just having a community, someone you can
Yeah.
trust, someone you can lean on. Who in your story, you're going through this process. Like, how important was that to you? Was it important? Was it helpful? What did that look like?
Yeah, that was everything. my at this point I was in my 20s, but I had grown really close as I was a teen to my youth pastor's wife
Mm,
from like teen years up into early 20s. And so as this was happening, I was like having ongoing conversations with her and her husband too, but more her, sorry, youth pastor's wife, not the head pastor. It was the head pastor who'd done all
right.
the
Yeah.
ridiculousness with the youth pastor and his wife. And I should also say that as what was happening in 2020 was happening, there'd been a lot of other fallouts in the church. Like there's
Mhm.
already so many waves of exodus of people at that point. But I was secured away in my children's ministry until this point and didn't really know what was happening.
Right.
And so as I was leaving during that instance for me, that was also a catalyst for other people for that same instance. Like other people also were really upset about that. And that included some of my closest friends. Like we were all in different places in the church at that point, but that sermon was like, ooh, okay, it's time. And so when we made the shift to leave, I had them too as we were looking for other places and figuring out what was next. I think if I had done that alone, it would have been even more of a struggle to stay connected, even in the small ways that I have been.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned in your story you got married to the translator on the mission trip.
Yeah.
Where is
Uh-huh.
where are they at in all this? I'm curious.
Yeah. So at that point, they were still in the Dominican Republic because we didn't get married until about 3, 4 years after we'd first met. Like it wasn't an instant connection or
Okay.
anything like that. I had
Yeah.
ended up going back and forth quite a few times on other trips
Okay.
at that point. And so it wasn't like my first trip. And then we were like married and happily ever after. I did go quite a few times outside of having feelings for the translator. And then 2021, we got married. I moved there for about 3 years.
Okay.
And then as of last year, 2025, we both moved back to, well, I moved back to the States. He was able to come with me. We still partner a lot with a ministry, a sports ministry. He's a baseball coach. And so we partner a lot with them. Still in DR. We're actually going back in a few weeks
All
to
right.
see family and things. And now he also still coaches here in Florida. And so there was some there's a lot of support, but also a lot of confusion because at least for a lot of people on the outside, like hearing what happened, they're like, how does that make sense? Like, how can you say you're Christian and you're doing all of these things and you're
Right.
questioning people? And so there is always so much support for him from him, but it was really like, how could this happen at a church? And that was the biggest thing because his culture is so different. Like having to explain that, unfortunately, like this can be a history in the States of these reactions. And so it got to be validating to not feel like, oh my gosh, I'm overreacting, but also really kind of just disappointing to see like so many other people could see how wrong this was, yet it still continues to happen all the time.
Yeah, for sure. So, someone hearing this, right, they're asking questions. They're like, all right, I need to find a new church. Should they, I guess, how would they go about like exploring like the theology of that church or even like asking the right questions? Like, how would
Yeah.
you, if I were to ask that, well, how would you answer that?
I will say one of the other great things that happened out of COVID was live stream church services.
That's true.
That was super helpful
Yes.
for me to be able to see the church's services before actually committing to going in person
Hmm.
because I was in a point where I just felt very vulnerable, like having to leave a place that I'd been at for 20 years and go somewhere new and risk it happening again. Because as I said, it was happening all over the place.
Hmm.
And there is this fear that, and I'd heard it in another podcast, a pastor had been saying how he'd felt during this time of sitting in a pew and wondering if the person sitting next to you was mourning with you or celebrating what was happening.
Hmm.
And that
Yeah.
was terrifying. Like
Yeah.
that was a risk where for a while I didn't want to take. So live streams was great churches' websites, like really getting a feel for how are they interacting in just their sermons before actually taking that next step of going in person.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Definitely with COVID and technology now, like you can definitely
Mhm.
do that
Yeah,
for sure.
it's been helpful.
Okay. So you are when does the relationship with, I know I mentioned it earlier, but the relationship with your current husband, how does all that start and where is that at in the story?
Yeah, so that would have started, let's see. So after my first trip, I started going back every 6 months
Okay.
for a week-long trip, but I'd started going with a different church because my home church at the time didn't take another team back after our first one.
Hmm.
It was probably a year after the first trip where we started talking more romantically and kinda seeing where our relationship could go. That would have been 2019. And so then after that, we decided it wasn't working, and then we took a break
Wow.
for
Okay.
about a year, honestly, and then yeah, and then COVID happened and, much more time on your hands, and we ended up reconnecting, and from there, it ended up being kinda like a wildflower, like, really kind of just fully seeing a person who was very much in line for what I feel like for women who've grown up in the church, like, there's especially in, like, the 90s, 2000s, there's very much an idea of, like, write out what you want in your husband, like, think it all through, like, plan it all out, and as unconventional as it was, he ended up being the person that I'd wanted for years,
Mm.
and it's really funny because that first trip, years back, there one of my mom's friends was on the trip, and she had said to me, like, "BC, are you gonna be the new Taylor?" Let's say, because there was another pastor at my church years before whose daughter met her husband in Mexico, and so we'll
Okay.
just call her Taylor for now, and that
Sure.
first trip, no feelings towards this man yet. My mom's friend was like, "BC, you're gonna be the new Taylor?" I was like, "No, I just met him." But, I ended up being the new Taylor and did
There you
end up
go.
marrying him. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I see a lot of couples and I know that everyone has these different philosophies for getting
Mhm.
ready for marriage. What is something
Yeah.
like you and your husband did that was really helpful to get that started?
One of the big things is that it seems ridiculous, but it helps a lot. Whenever someone says something and then they say, "Never mind," we're like, "Say it." Like, don't filter yourself. Like, if you've got something in mind, like, go ahead and say it. We can talk about it. That's helped a lot. And sometimes it's just silly things where maybe we said never mind because we answered our own question. Other times it was because we weren't sure how the other person was going to respond. And so really just getting to that place where it's like, it's okay to say it. Just say it. If it's dumb, I'll laugh at you, but at least we'll have gotten it out of the way. And I think that really created a space of really good just honesty and transparency, regardless of what it was. We knew that we could at least talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. So it seems like just having this open communication, this trust, like,
Yeah.
I'm afraid how you're going to react, but you still want to hear what I have to say.
Hmm.
Did you guys do any like premarital counseling or like you read a book
We
or
did
did a
a little
class?
bit.
Okay.
We did a little bit with former youth pastor who I'd been very close with
Okay.
over like Zoom, FaceTime, because we were out of the country for a lot of it.
Yeah.
And then besides, it was probably off and on for about 2 months, and there's, like, some videos that he'd also send us to review together, but we did do some premarital counseling.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, for sure. So, y'all get married. How has it been, being a business owner, a therapist, entrepreneur? I can't talk. How has it been doing all that and maintaining a marriage and
Yeah.
how are you juggling everything?
Yeah, I will say a lot of it is like communicating what we can and can't do because he also has a business of his own in addition to his full
Wow.
time. And so really just being able to say, listen, I can't handle this right now. Like I need you to like carry the load for me with this or like pick up on that. And also like with my job, there are some limitations of what I can and can't share with him in terms of HIPAA. But kind of like when there are instances when I can talk about like I feel overwhelmed with the amount of clients I'm experiencing. Like we talk about what would cutting back look like who can step up where. Same for him when we moved here. Like he, and by he I mean me because I was filling out all the applications for him, but I'd filled out like 80 applications for him before he even got like a job at a gas station. And like just that process too was really hard for him because he's so used to like doing something like being in his community helping or working on a project. And for a few weeks, he had to just sit and wait. And he ended up getting a different job in construction. But that in between period for him too was hard. And so, really, like having those seasons where things are hard, and again, going back to that open communication, being able to talk to your partner and being able to say, I need help. And also, keeping in mind, like, there will be seasons where we're having to work long nights, but we also have to make sure that we have seasons where we spend time intentionally together too, because our priority at the end of the day is always going to be our marriage. Like, businesses will come and go, and so will jobs, but we
Absolutely.
married for life. And so,
That's right.
barring any extenuating circumstance, this is who we're going to have at the end of the day. And so, we need to nurture that.
Yeah, for sure. How important is your faith in your marriage, would you say?
Yeah, that was huge, especially because that was a lot of what connected each other. Now I can't talk, connected us to each other. And so, really, like, even like when we were long distance, like talking about our faith, like asking questions, what do you believe about that? Like, what does this mean to you? Even now, like, as we still go to churches, like, we'll talk, like, what did you think about this? How do you feel about that? And that's really just having that ongoing dialogue so that one, we're not like just going through the motions of our faith too, but also like checking in on each other and seeing how they're doing.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, hypothetically, if you were a Christian and he wasn't, how difficult do you think this would be, or not difficult?
Sorry, could you repeat that first chunk of the question?
If like if you guys had different faiths, like if you're a Christian and he's not a
Mhm.
Christian, how
Yeah.
difficult do you think this would be, or maybe not?
I I was in, and I personally feel like my faith was so important to me that I needed my partner to be of the same religion as me. Other people feel
Absolutely.
differently, and that's fine. But for me, I that was a priority. Like that was
Right.
my bare minimum. Like a lot of other things were important too, but if that was missing, then it was going to be a deal breaker for me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So if someone is like, really passionate about somebody, I almost said a guy or a girl, but like it could be a girl or a guy listening too.
Yeah,
If they're on the fence about that, but they're not a Christian, or even not even just the same belief, like what do you think they
yeah.
need to hear?
I think you really have to sit down and think at the end of the day, what are you able to tolerate? Because you
Mm,
might make excuses for it now, but could you make it through several decades with this as an ongoing discussion? And if that doesn't feel in line with what you're wanting out of your relationship, it's okay to say that. Like, doesn't make the other person bad or wrong or just like any kind of like problematic person. It's just different from what you want for yourself.
right. Yeah. I love that. Just thinking through what could the next couple decades look like. It's not necessarily a
Yeah.
no, but it's not necessarily a
Mhm.
yes,
Yeah.
for sure. So, last couple of questions I like to ask.
Sure.
Sometimes, like I talk a lot about mental health on the
Mhm.
podcast, and, counselors, coaches, someone could be listening to this thinking about, okay, I'm thinking about starting therapy or life coaching or some sort of healthcare,
Mhm.
and they're on the fence about it. They're like, I don't know, maybe not, I don't think so. Like, what is something
Yeah.
you think they need to hear to kind of get them off the fence?
I'd say the biggest thing is It never hurts to try. Like you,
Mm,
and don't be afraid to try out different therapists. Like if you go to one therapist and it's not a great fit, that's okay because that therapist is human too. You guys may not just
mm.
connect. But
Right.
the ultimate thing too is to think about not what could you could lose, but also what could you gain? Like you could gain a lot of clarity and
Yeah.
mental well-being and balance and peace and thinking about are that is that temporary discomfort of having to open up to someone new, is that worth more than what you could gain?
Yeah. So you're talking about like how good it could be, like how good this
Yeah.
could be, and how beautiful it could be.
Yeah, especially because most pain, like most of the things that are worth it at the end of the day, they didn't happen overnight. Like that's so rarely going to be sustainable anyway. And so it absolutely makes sense to be nervous. Like
Sure.
oftentimes in therapy, you got to go deep and you got to look at some things that may not feel great to look at. But really letting yourself think about what could be on the other side of that is is really important to be considering.
100%. Yeah. Absolutely. So next scenario,
Mhm.
the president of the world comes to BC
Okay.
and says, "Hey, you have 1 minute to tell everybody something that they all need to hear in the whole world. You have the
Mm.
whole world's attention for 1 minute. What do you think they need to
Okay.
hear?"
Yeah. I would say that the most important thing to keep in mind is that when you are working towards something, always think about your why.
Mm,
And is it a why that is true and authentic to you? Is it you're being ambitious because you've got something you want to give the world? Or is it you're being ambitious because you feel like other people are expecting it of you? Like, are you changing your mind about your faith because it's the cool thing to do? Or is it because you're recognizing that this faith was never yours? Are
mm,
you making a huge change just because you're at a certain age and you should? Like, none of those things are going to matter if at the end of the day it's not something that you truly wanted for yourself. It's still possible to be ambitious and work towards your goals and have peace and be mentally well. But what is going to get you there is being honest with yourself and
yes,
actually looking at why you're doing this and letting that be the thing that's at the forefront.
absolutely. Figuring out your why. I love that for sure. So, any good podcasts, books, recommendations? They want to dig deeper. How can people find you if they want to look you up?
Sure. Yeah, I am blooming with BC on all social media platforms, and so I post there pretty regularly. I also have a website called Mindful Blooms Counseling. Sorry, mindful-blooms-counseling.com, where I post blogs and just like more insights into what this can look like and how to have that balance while still working towards your goals.
Hmm.
And in terms of like podcasts, like one of my favorite podcasts is called That Sound Fun by Annie F. Downs. She is a Christian, and she really just talks about what it means to enjoy life. Like, because so many people feel like life has to just be working and going all the time, but that's not true. Like, you can still have joy despite all of that. So I always love to recommend people check out that podcast too, to especially if you're in a place where you're just like feeling burnt out and you need some more like whimsy and fun in your life.
Absolutely. Okay. Awesome. Well, BC, thank you so much for being here, dealing with my technical issues, and just
No
hanging out.
problem.
It's great to hear your story.
Absolutely. It was
All right.
great seeing you again, Keenan.
Yes, for sure.